You work so hard. You show up every day. You do what's expected of you. But deep down, you know the truth. One paycheck shouldn't decide how your life turns out. But what if your evenings meant progress? What if your weekends built freedom? What if your laptop became more than just a screen? This isn't about quitting your job. It's about giving yourself options. While others scroll, you start building. Quietly, consistently, and on your own terms. No pressure, no guessing. Just a clear system you can run after work, before work, or whenever life gives you a turn. That's what Goldmine on hustlesafrica.com is for. Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Jagero, and this is Dialogues with Jagero. I am in the studio with a beautiful woman that I've really wanted us to talk with about issues that affect us as human beings, issues that affect women specifically, because there's something she's told me that I want to read to you with her permission. That what excites me is expanding my work and impact in women's health and wellness for women in midlife, but more so for us as African women. Honestly, what excites me the most is finally seeing African women take the lead in our own health journey. Because for so long, she says, everything we've been told about our bodies, especially around menopause, has been imported. Okay, so that's imported from the West. That doesn't always reflect our lives, our diets, and our realities here. So thank you very much, Amina. Welcome to Dialogues with Jagero.
Thank you, Jagero. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Tell me a little more. Tell me a little more of how well you are doing.
No, I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. It was interesting when I got your call, and I think I was a bit nervous also about being here. So showing up today, I feel like, okay, I'm ready to have whatever the conversation. I mean, I think we're going to talk about menopause, women's health, things around that. But wherever the conversation goes, I'm open to us having that exchange.
Yeah. I want to start this conversation by talking about what do you think about the world right now, based on the excitement that you told me about.
Yes.
Can you expound a little bit more? What is going on in the world today that concerns you, that excites you?
Okay.
That makes you say, I want to act.
All right. So for me, my thing is women's health and wellness. You know, I have always been excited about women's health and wellness from even my younger years. I used to be a group fitness instructor, which means I used to teach a group of women, either step or sculpt, or this class called Les Mills, which is a lifting class. So the whole, my life path, I found that I'm always interested in this question around well-being as a woman and really optimizing our health. So when I was younger, it was exercise, and then I did study some nutrition because I was really interested in just the whole woman. And then as I've gotten older, I've realized the big piece that we were never taught about was hormones, right? And really how hormones define us as women during the different phases in our life. And so I got to a place where I was in midlife. I am in midlife now. And I realized that my body was changing, things were changing, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. And nobody explained that to me. And when I found out, I was like, no. We need to talk about this. Women need to know more about their bodies. Women need to understand hormonally how they're being impacted. And then as an African woman, you know, I looked and I saw that a lot of the information we are receiving is really from the West, because the research and the data is from the West, right? And so we need to also kind of tell our own stories and start doing more of that here for Kenyan women, African women. And this whole thing about research and data for women in women's health, you know, women were not used in medical studies until 1993, okay? Before that, they would do all these studies on men and then take the information and apply it to women. But we're not the same, right? Hormonally, biologically, how our systems work. And they would just put, like if they tested a medicine, they would just put a smaller dose on a woman. And so there's this phrase that says, we are not small men. We've been treated like small men in medical research and data, but we're not, okay? So we started looking at women's health data research from the mid-90s, but a lot of it is white women, let's be honest. Okay, it's in the West. Yeah, maybe they have some women of color, but what about African women? So for me, what excites me, as I said, is just really also the African woman taking her own, looking at her health journey, looking at impacts, like what information do we have, even from traditional societies, on how we dealt through these different hormonal changes. But how do we respond as African women? Is there any difference?
Yeah, I want to ask a question. Do you think there is fundamentally a big difference between an African woman and a white woman?
I think so, yes. Let's just even go from the cultural experience, right? And I think culture informs our health and our bodies. So I do think there's a difference. And how you're raised and what impacts you have and kind of the stories that are told to you, that's what comes into your health journey also, how you eat, the different. So I think there are some differences. But fundamentally, I think there's some things that are the same, like how we function biologically. Maybe we all have the reproductive system, we have these hormones, but there might be other things that are a bit different. And I think when we get to talking about menopause, which I hope we will, which is I think partly why I'm here, they have shown that, women of color, black women, go through menopause sooner than white women, and that their changes, or what we call the symptoms of the changes of perimenopause and menopause, they last longer in black women than in white women. So it's something I would say this kind of like epidemiological studies, okay? I hope I didn't butcher that word, where you look at different peoples. But I think even in Africa, we can look at different tribes. Because even in Kenya, let's just say Kenya, we have 42 tribes. Okay, now they're officially 43, right? But 42 ethnic tribes. I'm sure they all have kind of their culture and things they do, the foods they eat, things that are important that may impact health and wellness. And so for me, I'm curious about that. I think it would be interesting to know. The women from the lake who probably eat more fish, right? The women from the hills, the hillside, I guess, is that what you call it? Yeah. The women around the Mount Kenya, the hillside, they're probably eating more cabbage.
Okay.
Sweet potato, arrowroot. Could there be an effect on health outcomes and how menopause is expressed, or any of the other kind of health changes, how it's expressed in our life? I think it could be different, yes.
Yeah. I want to talk about your life.
Okay.
When somebody looks at you,
yes,
is she American? Is she Muslim, Somali? Is she Russian? Who is Amina? Can we trace your life a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the US, how you ended up in law? So where are you born?
So I'm actually a Cold War baby.
A Cold War baby.
Yes, I am. My father was Kenyan. My father is not with us anymore. And his family is Kenyan. And he got a scholarship to go and study in the USSR, so the former Soviet Union. And you know that back then, so this is in the 60s, Kenyan students were getting scholarships either to the US, the airlifts, or they were getting scholarships to go to the Soviet Union. And if anything, it was Oginga Odinga, Raila's father, who had this friendship treaty with the Soviet Union. And I think they even came and built a hospital in Kisumu, the Russians, yes?
Yeah.
And so they gave this, through this friendship treaty, they said, we're going to give scholarships for Kenyan students to go and study in the Soviet Union. And so they had like representation from each tribe. But I think the Luos got the most number because, it was done by Oginga Odinga. And my father was one of those students who went to study in the Soviet Union. And he met my mother, a Russian, Ukrainian woman. Now that the Soviet Union has broken up, my mother is actually both Russian and Ukrainian. So they came back to Kenya, and I grew up here. But I was born in the last year of my dad's medical education. I was born in the Soviet Union. So my passport used to say, born in the USSR.
Okay. Interesting.
There's actually a song, Born in the USSR.
Yeah, there is
There is a song. I don't know if you know it. So I was born there, but I grew up in Kenya. I am Kenyan. I identify as Kenyan. And, I had the experience of growing up in Nairobi. I went to primary school, secondary school here. And then I wanted to go to the US for college or university. If my grandmother had her way, she wanted me to come back to, to the Ukraine to study, but I did not want to. I wanted to go to America.
Okay.
Everybody wants to go to America, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So I did. And I went to university there. And then I worked in finance for a while. And then I went to law school. Because, law school in the US is a second degree. It's not like in Kenya or the British system where if you're doing law, you do it like in your first degree.
Okay.
In the US, you do your 4 years of college/university, and then you go to law school as, second degree, post-grad.
So what was your first degree?
International studies with a focus on Middle East and African affairs.
Okay.
And economics. Oh, I also did economics. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was interested in the history and international relations because I knew I wanted to do law and probably international law, which I really didn't do international law. But that was kind of what I thought when I was younger. But in reality, my father wanted me to be a doctor, like him.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Why
I think
did you say
I was
no?
rebelling. I just said no. Like, I think it was like a rebellion because I was good in sciences. I did well in biology. In fact, when I went to college, I was put in the honors biology program because I did so well in biology. And I enjoyed it, but I think I can now admit that it was kind of a rebellion. But here I am back in women's health and wellness, which is an area I'm interested in. And it's very close to the medical field in terms of, okay, we're not doctors, but we still are interested in health concerns, and I particularly about women. So, I was in the States, then I did the US, I'm in college, then I did law school, and then I moved back home in 2012.
Because that is also interesting, you moving back home. When you were when an American,
Yes.
and a Kenyan,
Yes.
what are some of the differences that you see in somebody growing up in America, living in America? You can decide to answer these anyway, whether financial, whether marriage, whether relationships. What is it that you see is that something that you admire about America that is of concern to you here? Is there something that you admire about Kenya that is of concern to you when you were in the United States?
I mean, I enjoyed my time in the U.S. I lived in the U.S. for 22 years.
That's a long time.
That is a long time. So I left Kenya right out of high school, and I went, and I think I became an adult in America, right? So definitely the American system, I think, has had an impact on my values to some extent. But I still have, what my own values from Kenya as an African, as a Kenyan, as a mixed race Kenyan, because that was my experience growing up. But I think what I like about so let me always start with the positive. I try to start with the positives also.
Yeah.
I like the way things are organized in America, right? There's a system, and the system works. Okay, so if you're going to get your driver's license, you go, you get your number, you go in line, there's an order, nobody's jumping, nobody's cutting you in the line, coming to check if they can, it's organized. Things have systems and systems work, right? It's an area that in Kenya needs improvement, without shadow of a doubt. I think we all struggle with that. We can see even in traffic, we don't have organization in traffic. I mean, even driving here, the people overlapping you. So that's definitely one thing that I think was great in America that I think we have an opportunity here. But at the end of the day, they say east or west, home is best. So I was out there and I kind of thought, I think what it was is I was living life, and then I had gone to law school. In between there, I was married. I got married to an American man.
Okay.
And then I got divorced. And I think my divorce changed my perspective, because when you get married, you're like, this is my family, I'm investing my time here. So I was like, okay, he's an American, my family's here in America, I'm investing my time here. But when I went through the divorce, and then I came back, I moved from California, I went to law school in California, and then I moved back to the East Coast. So Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, they call it the DMV area, right? I moved back to that area, I connected with friends, but I think there's something about me realizing that I had family here in Kenya. I started coming back home to Kenya more often. I even came with my ex-husband. He came to Kenya, he visited. But after the divorce, and I started coming more, and I was like, you know what? This is my home. What am I looking for out there when this is where my family is? And I think I kind of reconnected with my family, and I realized I have an amazing family. Why am I... maybe I had to challenge myself. What am I running and trying to get there in America that I don't have here? So I was very happy to come home. Okay, there was also a relationship involved. Because I just felt like I was home. In America, it was home up to a certain extent. Right now, what's happening in America scares me. I'm even afraid to go back to America. I have a U.S. passport also, as well as a Kenyan one. But I'm afraid to go. The craziness that's happening.
Yeah.
They might be like, you've been out of America too long. Are you sure you're an American? Are you sure you're naturalized? They might just take you. So at the end of the day, this is my home. I grew up here. I have even my mother, who came here at the age of 23 from the Soviet Union with my dad, still lives in Kenya, and she wouldn't live anywhere else. I tried to see if she'd move and live with me in America. She was like, no. Let me go back to Nairobi. Let me go back to my home.
Amazing.
And she's lived here now for 54 years.
Wow, amazing. When we were talking before the podcast, you told me that you are in your life, which is now 5 point. Did you say 5.5 or 5.0?
5.5. I'm in version 5.5.
Of your life?
Yes. I'm 55 years old, so I say I'm version 5.5.
But a lot of people tell you that you don't look 55, right?
Yes, I do get that.
So then...
I'll accept 45. anything younger than that, I don't want.
What was the personal breaking point where you said, okay, I'm done with law, I'm done with economics and all these things that I do. I want to get to the point where I want to be in the community of women, speaking with women and helping them. What was that like? Do you remember something that switched on?
So when I came back home in 2012, beginning of 2012, I learned that if I wanted to practice law in Kenya, because I'd been practicing law in Washington, D.C., in the United States, that I would have to go to the Kenya School of Law for a year and then do I guess they call it the pupillage, where you kind of intern, you work with a lawyer for another year. And I think that wasn't that enticing to me at that point. I was 41, right? I was just like, okay, am I really, right, going back to law school? But I thought it was an opportunity for me to really try something different. And so I went into the hospitality. I went into the restaurant business, actually, when I when I actually decided what I was going to do, because I dabbled in a few other things. Like first I did something around L'Oreal products with a friend of mine who had a distribution business. So that was my first kind of entrepreneur experience. And then, she just took a different direction. And then I decided, like, what else am I going to do? And health, wellness, fitness at that time, I don't think the market was ready in 2012, 2013. Like I did these tours of spas and gyms, and there were not so many. I was like, a women's gym, spa, wellness center. But over the years, I've seen women now have been more interested in their health. They're interested in fitness. And I've seen that change. But back then, I was like, the market is not ready. So I went into the restaurant business. And it was interesting because I had 3 restaurants at one point.
Wow.
And I learned a lot. It was tough. I have to say that when I was like, I was a lawyer, like, how hard is it to own restaurants? Oh boy, did I learn. Okay, there's a lot. It's about owning your business also, but in hospitality, it's longer hours, it's, consistency of standards, making sure you don't have pilferage, aka theft in your own restaurant. Unfortunately, sometimes from your employees, right? Consistency of standards for customers when they come, so that they don't come another time and the burger looks different or the pizza tastes different. So I was learning a lot about that. And then food cost, making sure you're profitable, dealing with changes in prices from your suppliers, hiring, retaining talent. It was a lot, right? So I learned a lot. And then when COVID came, we kind of stepped back. I actually had closed 2 of the 3 and I was left with 1. One I closed in Nakuru because it was just too far and I was just having a problem going between Nakuru and Nairobi all the time. And I had closed it in 2019 with the thought of how do I rebrand it. And then the second one was, I was a service operator in a private club. And then we didn't have an agreement with the management. So I said, okay, I'm getting out of this. So I was left with 1 restaurant. And then COVID came. It was that last year, 2019. And then 2020, I was like, okay, maybe I've learned everything I need to learn from this. And me coming back to women's health and wellness was my COVID gift.
Oh, yeah? It's very interesting. I have had so many stories of COVID.
Yeah.
And every time I'm speaking with people, all I hear is silver lining.
Yeah.
Even the lady that worked with the World Bank, she tells me that her eureka moment actually came when she was in Ivory Coast and COVID suddenly struck. So it's very interesting, this COVID thing. A lot of businesses, a lot of shifts have happened during COVID, which is very interesting.
I agree. I think people had time to pause. And when you pause or you sit in silence, which I think is the purpose of meditation also, it's like you're able to see things and analyze, and I think you become aware of different things as opposed to constantly being on the go, go, go. You're missing things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you get into it? I guess now we are talking about menopause that I don't know so much about. And there is also introduction of the word
perimenopause. Yes.
Perimenopause. And I think we want to go back into this. If you were to talk to somebody and you're talking to them about perimenopause and menopause, where do you start this conversation?
Okay.
Because some people say why so many people feel tired and like themselves.
Yeah.
I am not sick, but I'm not okay either. What do you think is happening in modern life? So starting for me from the beginning and telling me this is maybe we started from puberty and follow the hormones. All right, people of the internet, I hope that you're enjoying this episode very much. And I just had a break to tell you about my new book. Everybody says that there is no job, and that is true. Also, that was me 10 years ago. The problem is that everybody is trying to get a job in their town, in their city, in their marketplace. They ask friends for jobs, mothers call uncles, uncles call brothers, but there are no jobs. Let me tell you what no one is telling you. Jobs migrated online. What I actually mean is there are many, many jobs around the world and there is no one to do them except you. I work for Americans myself. I work for Europeans. I work for the Chinese. I work for the Australians. I work for the Canadians. And so, because I have done so much for myself, I said to myself, you know what? I should compile what I've been doing for the last 15 years. So in 2024, I wrote a digital book called Goldmine 18 Hustles for Africans. And then in 2025, AI came. People say AI is taking away our jobs. And for me, I'm going to say false. There are actually AI jobs. Jobs are not being taken by AI, but there are new jobs online that are there because of AI. Now, mimi ni nani? I created more jobs. And for now, in my new book, we have 25 online and offline jobs that you can leverage on if you do not have a job. So in this powerful volume 2, I share 25 new actionable online hustles specifically researched and tailored for Africans. My new book provides clear step-by-step guidance drawing from my extensive experience and research, including the mistakes I've made and lessons I've learned over the 15 years that I have worked online. So what can you do online? You can become an executive assistant for busy folks in Europe, America, Canada, and get paid for tasks like watching videos and taking online surveys. Okay? You can build a lot of things. Build a business as a virtual assistant, start an e-commerce shop without capital, be an affiliate marketer, or you can also become actually an English tutor and tens of AI jobs. If you have a job, that is fine. But I also know that you can buy this book for that brother, for that sister, for that mother, for that cousin, for that husband who is watching Netflix all day at home. Buy it for your friend who is always asking for cash. You know that friend. Now, all the information is on the description below. You can also inbox me, you can WhatsApp me, or go to my website, which is odworjagero.co.ke.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're talking now about women, right? This is women's hormonal journey, okay? And yeah, we can look at it like menopause 101.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. Actually, the definitions will be more like menopause 101.
Okay.
So a woman goes through kind of like certain stages in her reproductive life, okay? It starts with puberty, which is around 12. I think now it's I think young girls are going into puberty a little earlier these days, but on average it's 12 to 13. And that's when we see young women or young girls getting this surge of the female sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So those two sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are really what makes the woman. For man, it's testosterone. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. So during puberty, young girls start to get these hormones and their bodies start to change. And then they go into so it's the beginning of their reproductive life. So from puberty into womanhood, then a woman kind of goes through into her fertility. And peak fertility is like from when we go through puberty to probably about the early 30s. So peak fertility is really the 20s up to early 30s. And then from our 30s, maybe our mid-30s on, there's a change in our hormones. So we go from being in our reproductive phase, or what we call pre-menopause, right? And that's puberty through motherhood. Then we go to what's called perimenopause. And it's a transition phase before you hit menopause. And then after you hit menopause, you live in post-menopause.
Okay.
So let me break that down a bit further.
Please do.
So I like to think of menopause as an umbrella term, okay? I want to first start by saying menopause is a natural phase or cycle in a woman's life. And every woman will go through menopause because it means that you've gone through this phase where your reproductive years end, and then you live with these change in your hormone profile for the rest of your life, okay? So the umbrella term includes perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. So we've already, premenopause, we're not talking really much. We said it's puberty, it's when a woman is fertile, it's when she's having children. And then comes a time between her 30s and 40s when her hormones start to change. And that's what perimenopause is. It's the transition phase leading up to menopause. And when we hit menopause, the definition, the clinical definition is when a woman has gone for 12 consecutive months without her period. Okay? Then you hit menopause. So menopause is really that one day, FYI.
1 day.
1 day. The 12 months, no period, is menopause is that 1 day. The time leading up to is perimenopause, and then you live in postmenopause. So another way I can say it for you is we go through perimenopause, it's a journey, to reach menopause, which is that day when we haven't had our menstrual cycle for 12 consecutive months. After we reach menopause, then we live in this phase called postmenopause, where we're not fertile anymore, and our hormone profile changes from what it looked like when we were in our reproductive years.
So then, when somebody uses the word, I am menopausal, what does that mean? Because to you, the word looks irrelevant because it is ours, literally. So then why are we saying we are menopausal?
You know, that's a very astute observation, I have to say, as a man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people like to use the word menopausal. But menopausal is really that entire phase, right? If you're in perimenopause, you're menopausal. You're going through the transition to arrive at menopause. When you hit menopause, you're menopausal. When you've hit menopause and you're living in postmenopause, you're still menopausal. So it's actually, I don't think people really think about it like through the phases, but it could be an apt word to use, I think, anytime from perimenopause through menopause to postmenopause. Yeah.
Okay. But now I think we can come back.
Yes, we can.
And study the journey of a woman and what she needs to do during this entire phase. Where do you want to start from? Because there is a day I was with another lady and she started sweating and she was telling me she actually left this room and went and sat out there. And I asked her, is it really that hot inside there? I don't feel it. I was maybe it's just my body because I am in that period where I get sweaty, I get different feelings all over the place. Yeah.
You might need a fan in here. Yeah. It is a bit warm because think about it, there are lights and everything. So, yeah, women of a certain age might feel like it's a bit warm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've given you the overview of what happens to women when our reproductive life goes through this change, right? And perimenopause, the word means on or around. So it means on or around menopause. So it's a period leading up to menopause, right? And I think a lot of times when people are saying they're menopausal and they're struggling and they're feeling this, it's the perimenopause phase that has the most challenge. In fact, they call it the chaos of perimenopause.
Oh, what is the chaos of perimenopause?
The chaos of perimenopause is the fact that a woman's hormones start to change and it impacts the way she feels about herself, okay? So in a nutshell, if I was to explain what's happening during perimenopause, the two sex hormones I mentioned earlier, estrogen and progesterone, they start to decline. But the way it is, progesterone declines more like that, and then estrogen, which I call the master hormone of women, fluctuates wildly, up and down and up and down through perimenopause.
Why do you call it the master hormone?
So estrogen, we have now found, because, you know, there's more conversations about menopause. There's research that is kind of increasing in the area of menopause to acknowledge that this is an important phase of a woman's life cycle, this midlife change. And they've discovered that estrogen, that we as women, we have estrogen receptors all over our body. Every part of our body, from our brain, our skin, our hair, you know, all throughout our heart, our bones, our genitourinary area, you know, every part of our body, the body of a woman's body has estrogen receptors. So when we're going through this transition of perimenopause, where our hormones are fluctuating, it affects our body. And so women start to feel the changes, and they're like, what's going on with me? Why do I feel different? Like, actually, I think many women say they don't feel like themselves anymore. Okay? Because the fluctuation in the hormones affects the function in the body. So the heat that you're talking about, the lady was here and she was feeling warm. In the brain, where we have estrogen receptors, there's a part of our brain that's responsible for temperature control. The estrogen receptor is not receiving estrogen like it used to, so it affects how our body controls our temperature. So the body gets hot because it misreads. There's a misreading going on because there's not enough estrogen in your brain. So in this transition phase, I don't know if you've heard people saying the symptoms or the signs of perimenopause and menopause. Have you heard this?
Yes.
Yeah? I think
But
even...
I'm not clear about what they mean.
If you go to my Instagram, in fact, I have this, it's like the 54 signs of perimenopause and menopause. It's posted. I have it pinned.
54?
54.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, indeed. So let me start by saying that, you know, every woman goes through menopause, but every woman has her own individual journey. Yeah? So no two women really go through menopause the same. So this list of changes or signs and symptoms, not every woman is going to have every single one of them. Some women have certain things, some women don't. And I think hot flashes, people think, is the most common symptom of perimenopause and menopause. Do you think that? If I was to ask you.
No,
Okay, tell me what you think it is.
I think hot flashes is just one of them, but
Okay.
also I've heard my sister talking about fatigue.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
How old is your sister?
my sister is just nearing her 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she talks about being tired
Yes.
and sometimes waking up weird hours of the night.
So sleep disturbances.
Yeah,
Insomnia.
insomnia. She talks about that a lot, and sometimes headache.
So she has migraine headaches. Okay. So I'm glad. Yeah. No, I like to call hot flashes the celebrity of menopause, because everybody thinks if you're not having a hot flash, you're not going through menopause. And that's not true. So from that list, I was telling you those 54 signs, women experience it completely differently. Let's define, we didn't talk about ages when I was giving you definitions.
Okay.
And I think, you know, for anybody who's watching this who kind of thinks that they can't connect with this conversation, I think it's important you listen, because this is happening either to your mother, your sister, maybe your grandmother if you're a bit younger, your coworker, you know, your partner, your spouse, you know. So you've mentioned your sister, I like that. I imagine your wife is not yet experiencing any of these changes.
Yeah, she's 36.
Okay. So it's coming soon, right? So it's good that you're having this conversation now so you can be ready. But let's talk about these age things, age groups. Like when we talked about, I mean, the age ranges to think about. Because I think one of the myths about menopause is people think menopause happens when you're old. Like really old. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
we mostly look at it as somebody was gotten all the children, they have left the university, they are working, you're alone at home, menopause.
Yeah, they're old. They're not fertile anymore. Some people might even say, oh, they're irrelevant. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, so back to the age ranges, right? So the average age of menopause is about 51. And this is, I guess, based on the data that we've been receiving and research. But the age range when women go most likely is between 45 and 55. That's what's considered, like normal. If you go through menopause before 45, it's called early menopause. And if you go through menopause before 40, there's something called premature menopause, because that's considered too early for a woman to go through menopause. It's generally around 50s. Yeah, 45 to 55 is that range. Now, perimenopause, still not enough data, research and data about this. They're starting to study it a bit more. It's this kind of like zone, this time frame that it can start in your mid to late 30s for some women. And it can last for anywhere from 2 to 10 years. So some women can go through the transition really quickly, and some women it can take a whole decade. And in that time frame is when you're feeling these changes like, fatigue, headaches, hot flashes, night sweats, changes in your skin, brain fog, memory difficulties, lack of motivation, not feeling like yourself, dry skin, dry hair. And then we go genitourinary, vaginal dryness, increased urinary tract infections, incontinence, even though that tends to be something that happens to women a little further down the line.
What is incontinence?
Incontinence is when you're not able to hold your urine until you go to the bathroom, so you just kind of leak, like okay. You'll have a bit of urine, or it can be stress, or anyway, it could be just the fact that your genitourinary area is changing, and so you're not able to hold the urine. It could be your pelvic floor muscles are not strong anymore. So there's a few different reasons, but menopause is one of the reasons that women can become incontinent. And we kind of think of it as something that happens when women get older. It's happening, by the way. Women are using pads and diapers as they're aging because they're becoming incontinent, because they were not told about what they could do when they were going through menopause to help that, because you can help it. Mm-hmm. We'll come back to that.
All right.
So during this transition phase is when a lot of people feel these changes. That's why it's called this zone of chaos, or the chaos of perimenopause, because the woman she just doesn't feel like herself anymore. And she's wondering what has changed, and it's because your hormones are changing. And for many years, we didn't really talk about it, right? And what has happened is that women have gone through it. There's been a silence, a suffering of women. Maybe there's a shame and a stigma about saying you're going through menopause, because then you're saying you're aging, you're not fertile anymore. Maybe you've been made to feel like it's going to question your relevance in your marriage, in your relationship, in the workplace. So I want to have this conversation because we need to end the shame, the stigma, the silence, the suffering. Women need to know what's happening in their bodies. And if these hormonal changes are impacting their relationship, well, first of all, their body, how they feel about themselves, if it's impacting how they show up at work, if it's impacting their relationships, if it's impacting their family, then isn't it worth knowing more about it so that you can do something about it?
For sure.
Yeah.
How do we now, for example, I am listening to Amina.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I hear her.
Yes.
How do I start my journey?
As a husband?
No.
Oh, as a woman. There's a role for husbands in this.
But you see, when you are explaining, look, I have been on this side of the chair.
Yeah.
and I've listened to every time I'm listening to women talking about themselves, all right, and talking about other women in a positive way, of course, and how they need to know their bodies and understand their bodies.
Yeah.
But there is something really, really silent about a male body.
A male body.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't expect women to come and talk about the male body, but I'm just wondering, okay, they're talking about red pill, they're talking about manosphere, they're talking about this and that, but nobody's talking about the male body.
Yeah, I guess nobody's told you that there's also andropause, which is the male menopause. Yeah, when your testosterone goes down, it doesn't go down as drastically as it does in women, but it changes.
It does.
Yeah.
So so I should be perimenopausal right now.
Periandropausal.
I like the one. and okay, great. And then there is the post-andropausal. Mm-hmm. Right, I think so.
But I think I realize now there's a body that I was talking to, and it's like a membership. I want to join this society in the UK that talks about menopause. And now they're like, we're also going to give you information about andropause, because if you're talking about menopause, you should be talking about andropause. It comes together. And I was like, okay. So
that would be really nice, and I'm looking forward to the day that you really accept that you need to be talking about it.
Andropause as well.
Yeah, because I feel like, every time, and I think this is the men. Sometimes men just they feel like, okay, I am this tripod that is holding the camera.
Yeah.
When I'm not able to hold this camera, then I'll just go down and they'll replace me. And I'm thinking, okay, even if you can't hold this camera, but what is wrong with you? Why can't you hold this camera?
Okay.
Can we find a way whereby, because they're moving parts of this tripod, can we oil you up? Mm-hmm. What can we do to you?
Okay.
And I think a lot of that conversation, one of the things that I keep seeing amongst the women folk is that they're slowly realizing so much about life and about. But us, the men, even people have complained that, Jagero, your podcast is full of women. Are you going to do something about
They're
it?
They're going to complain about this. So why are you talking about menopause?
So they're like,
yeah.
Are you going to do something about this?
Yeah.
Are you going to bring men to also speak? But
it's a valid point, and I think maybe you can take the lead on this area, because who really is talking about men's health in this marketplace? In this marketplace, I mean like Kenya, Africa, I don't know. In the UK, Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, we talked about, he's definitely bringing a lot of health things around. I know he brings up women's health a lot, because I always watch whoever he brings up for women's health, but he also brings issues pertaining to men. But you know what I think, my personal opinion? I think that men, the way you're socialized and raised, it's, about what you're going out there to do. Your identity is about, who am I going to become as a man? What am I going to do for work? How am I going to make money? How am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to support? So there's this, hopefully provider protector kind of role, which I think is great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I like, provider protector for men. And I don't know that maybe in that men have never really been empowered to look at their own health, because there's always somebody doing it for them. Either it was your mother, and then when you're in a relationship, it's your partner or your spouse. Your wife will be like, hey, honey, it's time for you to go for a medical exam. But I've seen that a lot of men will even be like, no, I have to go to work. No, I have this trip. No, I have this thing. Like, they try to put off things pertaining to their health, like putting it off in lieu of, of work. They'd rather go to work, or maybe go on that golf trip, or go hang out with the boys, or go eat that nyam chom, or whatever it is, wherever you are in your life. And it's the women who are pushing the man to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Am I right in that?
You are, and this is the thing. I was talking to Doreen Nyiramugisha, another woman, and she asked me a very interesting question. I didn't know the lead.
Okay.
to that question. And she asked me, when is the last time you, and I thought it was why is she asking that question? When is the last time you took your car to the, for whatever they do every other time?
The servicing.
The servicing.
Yeah.
When? And interestingly, it was just the other week.
Yeah.
And she asked me, when did you go for your body?
Last medical check, yes.
You know, when do you know what is going on in your gut? Have you thought about it? You've been eating for I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Do you know what is going on there? Do you know what is going on in your ears? You know, there are so many things that you don't know are happening. And this is why suddenly you are so sick and people are wondering, when did you become sick?
Yeah.
You have been sick for a long time and you don't know.
You don't know. Exactly. Yeah. There you go. That's a fair point. Like, when is the last time you had a medical exam? And I don't know that men do that naturally. I think it's under the influence of a woman in their life. Mother, sister, wife, partner, maybe somebody even at work, colleague, be like, hey, they're doing the medical exams. I don't know. But I think maybe that's the change that's needed, is how can men, will it change? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they do say that, men who are married live longer than men who are not.
I can see why.
Yeah, because the woman is taking care of a lot of things. And the reverse is true. Women who are single live longer than women who are married. Actually, and women's health, health.
Why do you think? What is the reason for that? Have you ever thought about it? Why is it that women that are single live longer?
Well, I think there's certain stresses that come in family life that maybe single women don't have to deal with as much. Whether it's children, husband, taking care of the man, taking care of the children, taking care of the family. Maybe there's a little less of that. And so there's less impact on her health. Because they do say single women are healthier than married women. But if I compare with men, they're still healthier than men generally. But after menopause, by the way, the health of women goes down, which is another reason we should be having this conversation, and we'll come back, is that, when we lose our sex hormones, those two important ones, it opens the door to chronic diseases for women. Because we've been generally healthier than men. And then after menopause, we're more, we have, just more risk of chronic illnesses. But back to the topic of men and women and the difference is that I think women have facilitated this a lot for men, with as partners and wives and sisters.
But it is also the fact that a lot of men have not taken a keen interest on the male body, and so even when it comes to the girl child, there are lots of men that come out and say, okay, why don't you talk about the boy child?
Yeah.
And I've heard women saying, we have got so much to talk about and discuss with the girl child.
Yeah.
Why don't you take over?
Yes.
And talk about the boy child? What are you waiting for?
Correct.
All right? So I think it's the same thing that when you come to health and we're talking about men, it's difficult for women to cross and talk about andropause when men are supposed to be talking about that too.
Yeah, I think you need to advocate for your own health. Like we're asking women to advocate for their health, right? And become more aware of what's changing with their hormones. And that's why even this menopause conversation, because it's an area that has not been given much attention, including from the medical profession, like doctors, just not telling women about menopause. We want women to learn so that, you can advocate for your health. So similarly, men, I think there's got to be something that's pushing men to take an interest in their bodies. And I think for men, you guys really have to think about like prostate health, which, because now I'm in midlife, so I'm looking at kind of what's happening with men in midlife and beyond. Prostate health is a big issue for men that is not talked about. I think prostate cancer is rising in men,
Just a minute. So that is the thing. In terms of this topic, you're the one who's giving me a lot of the lead.
Okay.
And you keep saying we'll come back to that. You remember?
Yes, yeah. Do you remember? Yeah. Yes, tell me what we're coming back to.
We were talking about, one of the things that I wanted us to talk about is exactly how the woman takes care of her body.
Yes.
Takes care of her hormone.
Yes.
Are there exercises that she needs to do?
Yes. Yes.
Are there things she needs to drink? Yeah.
Okay, so, we said how women around 51 hit menopause generally, but it's different for different women. The transition perimenopause, when women start to feel the change, the discomfort around perimenopause, menopause, all those symptoms or changes, as I like to call them, they start to experience, is a change in hormones. So there's kind of like two main things that help women through this transition. One is lifestyle, okay? Lifestyle matters. But these things that we're talking about, lifestyle, is probably the same things we'll say for lifestyle when you're younger, and we'll probably say for men also, right? But it just kind of, when we get to this phase and we're losing these two hormones that have supported so many functions in our bodies, we need to do more to keep our health, right? That's really what's happening. Excuse me. We need to do more to keep our health. So that said, I call it lifestyle medicine. It's kind of what I do as a coach. As a coach, I tell women, we need to look at your lifestyle, because lifestyle is like medicine for you when you're losing your hormones. It's, what are you eating? How are you moving? How are you sleeping? Maybe supplementation along with what you're eating. How are you managing your stress? Those are the key. And then there's hormones. So there's something called menopause hormone therapy, or commonly known as hormone replacement therapy, that you can also get to supplement the hormones you're losing in your body so that you can have more energy, have a clearer brain, sleep better, have more energy to exercise, and start to feel more like yourself, okay? Now, hormone therapy is with a doctor. I can't tell you, here's what you need to do. I can tell you, I can give you hormone education, and then I'll tell you need to go to the doctor and speak to them about getting hormone therapy if it's the right thing for you, right? Because they also have to look at your body, make sure there are no contraindications. So it's lifestyle, and then hormone therapy is another tool that we can use in this transition of perimenopause, menopause. And when I mentioned to you, I remember what I said, we'll come back to. When I said to you, excuse me, the voice now, let me have a sip. So when I said that, menopause opens the door to chronic diseases, with the changes in our hormones, this is why lifestyle is so important. Because if you don't change your lifestyle to deal with the fact that you've lost estrogen, progesterone, then you're more prone to these chronic diseases. Then you're going to have problems in your old age, from your midlife to your old age, And I feel like we have so much power, or so much that we can do to make sure the quality of our life is better as we go through menopause. Because the other side to menopause, if you are taking care of yourself and you're moving and you're eating well and you're exercising and you're managing your stress, is that you recognize that it's such an opportunity. You're done having children, you're done having periods, right? You can focus on this new era of your life where a lot of women will, decide they're looking at their boundaries, at work, in the relationship, at home. They feel like they're more able to say what they think or feel, right? And so I think it's an opportunity for women to look and see what's working in their life, and maybe what's not working they can change, and really just have this mindset. It's about your experience, your menopause experience. It's another phase of your life, and you can choose to have a good midlife and old age, but you have to do the work, right? So even to age well, how you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how you manage stress, what boundaries you have, whether you're healing trauma that maybe you've been carrying, and now it starts, I think those things actually start to come up during this transition if you haven't dealt with, So that's your opportunity to create the life where you can thrive. Because we don't need to just survive through this, we can actually create a life that we thrive in. So understanding that this hormonal transition is going to happen, getting the information and education you need, whether it's from people like myself, who's, I do advocacy work, but I also do coaching for women, whether it's going to a doctor or working with both of us, if you want hormone therapy. But I think it just needs another whole retake at looking at, we're all going to go through it. There's no negotiating out of it as women. So how do we optimize this transition?
What do I eat?
So,
what kind of exercises do I do?
Okay, good questions. So one of the things that happens also with the changes in our hormones is certain changes in our body happens. Like they generally see with women in perimenopause, menopause, insulin resistance tends to go up, right? Insulin resistance can occur from having a lot of inflammation in the body and the food we eat. So we have to make healthier choices, like non-inflammatory foods. What do I mean by that? I just mean like more foods that don't make us feel bad. Part of that is, I'm going to go back to the symptoms actually, because we didn't touch on this. This is an important one. Yeah. When we're talking about the transition of perimenopause and menopause, and I talked about some of the symptoms, which some, the energy, poor sleep, dry skin, dry hair, vaginal dryness, mood swings. Changes in the mood is a big one. Sometimes even what's called menopause rage, where women just get really, really angry, like things are triggering them because there's changes happening in your brain with the loss of estrogen also and can affect your mood. And I think this is a very important one to talk about that we didn't talk about. The mental and emotional effects of perimenopause and menopause. It's very important to acknowledge that, a good number of women will have increased anxiety, maybe depression, mood swings, rage, maybe just not feeling like yourself. And that's because of your hormones changing. That's how powerful your hormones are in your body. Okay? And beyond our sex hormones, even the other hormones you have, like your thyroid hormone, like your testosterone, just oxytocin, all the different hormones, adrenaline, dopamine, hormones are important chemical messengers in the body, right? And they have function. So when you're losing function of some of them, then it impacts how you show up. So as you're going through this transition, what we found, lifestyle will help some of these things, including how you feel about yourself. So along with that, there's what's called the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause, which is when women start to lose muscle and bone, and your metabolism also starts to slow down. We've kind of dismissed it as aging, but it's really tied to loss of estrogen in reality. So in exercise, we need to kind of preserve muscle and bone, but also in food, women need more protein as they're getting older. Okay. I don't know if you've heard this a lot on social media, or like, eat more protein, eat more protein. I think you eat more protein, right?
Yes.
We discussed this, so more protein in the body for women going through menopause is important. And more fiber and more vegetables, fatty fish, things like omena and buta, which I really like. I really love omena, by the way.
Oh, really?
I do. So there's just certain types of fatty fish. Okay, they say salmon. Salmon is very expensive in Kenya. There are other options. But we can go to even traditional foods, cabbage, all the different greens, sweet potato, arrowroot. They're very dense in fiber and really good for your microbiome, the gut, where you said you were being asked that question. So for women, these things, I kind of feel like this is the time when your body is like, get your lifestyle in order because things are changing so you can set yourself up well for your old age. Yeah. And the exercise that's highly recommended is strength training or resistance training, where you're lifting some weight or you're lifting your body weight. Because what happens as we get older, we are losing muscle, bone. You need to be able to get up from a chair and sit down in a chair, so squats are really good. So those kind of functional exercises are really important for mobility as we get older. Because I think one of the things that I know is that I'm not buying into, like, the menopause journey that we've accepted with our mothers or our grandmothers, where you're frail and you're weak and maybe you're walking like with a stick or a walker. We actually can eat well and exercise and have mobility as we get older. That's possible.
Yeah. And just be like not really normal, but you can still be very, very functional.
You can be very active and functional. So I think this is that opportunity here, like this menopause, perimenopause, where you're like, okay, things are changing, but what am I doing with lifestyle? I know we just kind of touch on this, but that could be like another whole discussion on lifestyle medicine and hormone therapy, right? Because there are solutions for women, and I think women should learn and be able to advocate for themselves. And it's important that people understand also in families, in the workplace, in relationships, that women are going through these changes. Because think about it, a woman is in her 20s, 30s, she's had kids, she's in the workplace, she's thriving, and then she's kind of going into her 40s, and all of a sudden, bam, she's hit by changes in her hormones, and it changes how she feels and who she is, and we can support her. I really want women to be more supported in the workplace and in relationships and in the family, and for women to feel free to be able to speak about it. Yeah.
I want us to finish by talking about what you do and the services that you offer.
Okay.
Yeah, so that a lot of people will ask, how do I reach her? How do I see her? Yeah.
Sure.
So you can tell me a little bit about the name of your company.
Yes.
The services that you offer. I see that you've worked for very big organizations. So you could tell me those ones. If you have a website, you can say them. If you have a phone number for the organization, you can also say it. Sometimes my people will forget to put it on the description, but when you say it's baked into the video. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So, it's okay. We'll come back to it. I didn't really get it deep in. It's okay. Let me just share my information.
You can say whatever you want.
No. I think that I wanted to say,
okay,
and that was when I think I said we'd come back to that. We never came back to that. Is during COVID, the reason why I went into menopause is because I discovered I had gone through menopause and no doctor had ever told me. And
you hadn't gone.
I had already gone through it.
Oh, really?
And had no idea. Yeah.
When were they supposed to tell you?
When I go to the OBGYN, when I'm going for fertility treatments, all those times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's for another day. It's okay.
Yeah.
Let me give my contact information. So,
first of all, start with your services.
Oh, yeah. So I'm a menopause advocate, meaning that I speak really, I go to organizations, workplaces, I talk about menopause, I do events, and I'm also a menopause coach. So I would say a menopause and midlife coach, where I help women with lifestyle, nutrition, movement, or exercise, stress management, sleep issues, and I give them some hormone education, and I can also direct them to doctors if they're having problems trying to get information from a doctor. So you can reach me on my socials, mimi.fabulous, mimi.fabulas, fabulous. And then I have another platform called Fabulous Living, fab.u.living, living. That's on Instagram I've given you, at Fabulous Living. So actually, Fabulous Living is my platform, my knowledge and awareness platform, to help women navigate perimenopause and menopause, to end the shame, stigma, suffering, and silence, right? And just help women navigate this with clarity, confidence, and support. So you can reach me on Instagram. On Facebook, it's Amina Farah, right? I don't think I need to spell that out.
Farah ends with a
H. Farah, yeah, one R and has an H. And Amina without an H, Amina, because people will put an H in my first name, and then Farah, they'll put two R's or whatever. So it's Amina, Farah, yeah.
Okay.
So Amina Farah, and my email is amina@fabulous.com. So if you go to any of my socials, you can reach me on email. Yeah. I have a website, but it's in development, so I'll just, fabulous.com. Let's just leave that aside.
Okay.
And now I'm also on LinkedIn, working on my profile there slowly, as Amina Farah, menopause advocate coach, speaker, and educator.
I saw a little bit of some things that you put there on LinkedIn.
Yeah, a little bit. I need to do some more work there.
Yeah. Well,
And then my phone number, 0717-299-699.
oh, that is very clear to the people of the internet. I
Yes.
think that after saying that, they wouldn't be able to ask, how do I reach her? But some people also do not watch to the end, so they miss that information. So we
Yeah.
will do as much as possible to put it in the description.
Yeah.
So this is why I say thank you very much.
Yeah. Do you think this information is helpful for your audience? I guess that's my question to you.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, because what I've realized with the audience is that sometimes you put up something. There is a guy that spoke from about men's reproductive system,
Yes.
and I thought that actually a lot of it is going to be specific to men, and it's the men that's going to watch it. When I looked at it, it was 80% women, 20%
Oh, wow.
men.
Okay.
And so you might think that this is geared towards women, but a lot of men are going to be watching this thing, you know?
I hope that they see something and that they can really support their partners,
Yeah.
their wives, their sisters, their mothers, or their teammates in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you start listening to women, you realize that there is a lot of things going on
Yeah.
that sometimes we don't understand. You know, so the other day we were talking to Doreen Mugish about the period phase, and it reads like rocket science.
Also, you went through the whole cycle.
Yeah.
The menstruation, the ovulation,
The luteal phase.
and then how you go. But yes. So that change in that 30 days for women, right? It's happening. So in perimenopause, actually perimenopause is called puberty in reverse.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah. So, young people going through puberty, especially young girls, they can be quite emotional. There's a lot of things happening. Their bodies are changing. And it can be a bit chaotic during this is the teens, even for boys, right? And so it's happening in reverse.
All right. People of the internet, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. Please consider to subscribe. If you really love Dialogues with Jagero and you're watching without subscribing, please subscribe. Hit on that notification bell so that when there is another podcast with Farah, you'll be the first person to be notified. Please consider following us on socials. We are all over the place: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere. So until another episode, bye for now. HustlesAfrica.com, a guide to high-paying online jobs. At HustlesAfrica.com, you'll discover the jobs people are doing from home, the platforms where opportunities are found, the skills that open doors, and the practical steps to begin earning. Go to HustlesAfrica.com today.